Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey, so we're giving the listeners a little bit of a brief background. So EOS implementer, what do we mean by that?
Yes, great question. As I was running a business, I was really struggling with how to create a vision and alignment with my team about where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there. And luckily at that time, I just happened upon the book by Gino Wickman called Traction. If your listeners have not heard of it, I highly recommend picking that up. And it's a great place to start. So EOS is basically a way of harmonizing and orchestrating all the moving parts of your business. So it's an execution model. It's a way of running your business more effectively and efficiently so that you can really focus on leaving that to the science in the background. So you can really focus on the artistry of what you love to do and are best at. And I liken it to like your cell phone. Like you've got an iOS on your cell phone that kind of runs the background so you can do all this crazy stuff with your cell phone now. The same thing's true. EOS, once you get these tools and disciplines primed and working for you, it's a system of execution that runs in the background so you don't have to think about it. You can really think about the strategy of your business, about where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So I'm actually we call ourselves implementers instead of coaches or advisors, because really it's about implementing the set of tools and principles into a business. That said, I've also been an EOS client. So, I've sat on both sides of the table, and I'll tell you, it's an incredibly rewarding journey on both a business front and a personal front for leadership. Looking forward to digging into that conversation with you.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love it. So iOS is around for the iPhones and things like that.
Right.
And so EOS, is that Entrepreneur's operating system?
Oh, you're so good. You are so good. It is. It's the entrepreneurial operating system. You got it.
Awesome.
I don't know if you just into it. It's a friend from Dennis.
Yeah, so I thought, oh, wow, which one is it? Okay. Yeah, cool. I really love what you've just shared there too, because I think the implement versus the terminology coach, it's a bit like becoming a goal setter. People go, oh, should I set goals? I said, no, let's talk about being a goal achiever. And they're like, oh, it's because it's a totally different mindset, right? We're going to go out there and achieve goals because people can set goals. That's all good. People can actually have an operating or do things in business. But I think I love what you say there in the sense of it's actually helping them do what they do in the background so then they can get on with their artistry. And it is an art and what a lot of people do, right? So I think it's...
The difference is there's a place for coaches and advisors. There's a place for that. I'm not saying that there's not. What I'm saying is if I'm telling people what to do, that's creating dependency for them to need me. And my job is to lessen that dependency and to teach them to be what I jokingly call Jedi Masters, right? I want them to be leaders. I want them to be seen by their team as leaders. And if I'm the one that's the answer person, they're going to be constantly feeling dependent on me for that. Whereas if I empower them through this learning of the dynamic around leadership, that they've got the answers in themselves. It's just a good facilitator or implementer that pulls them out.
Yep.
Just pull those answers out. So
yeah,
that's the difference.
And I think that's what leadership's about, is actually, it's not to give them the fish, it's actually to teach them to fish.
Yes, you got it.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that's right. And listeners, I think that leaders aren't doing this enough. And there's actually an episode I did recently, Emily, which is called, because I do 2 interviews a week and I'm also then doing a freestyle version, and it's called the Ask Dennis episode. And it's about, the actual title of that episode is actually Ask, Don't Tell. And it's about asking them questions to bring out what you just said and facilitate that rather than saying, hey, here's the answer.
100% agree. It's something that we teach as a part of this experience. The question to statement ratio when you're working with your people should always be a minimum of 2 or 3 to 1, that you're asking more questions than you're talking, right?
Yep.
So the fact that you get that right off the outset here is huge.
Yeah. Sometimes we get a little bit of a clue in life. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Hello. And it might help to understand we need to listen more. But I don't think it's just listening. It's actually really being present and listening to what people are saying. And in fact, sometimes listening to what they're not saying.
That is critical. So I learned this early in my leadership journey that I was not a good listener. If I'm being completely honest, I would think 2 steps ahead about what people were saying. And what did it for me was Stephen Covey's seek first to understand,
Nice.
then be understood, because it's not just about listening. That's passive. You've got to actively be mining for understanding and then coming together for really what that means in terms of mutual value agreement. And that's the difference between leading and managing. Managers will just tell you, right, the expectation. Leaders create an opening for the person that they're working with to come in and join them. And then they get to have their hands in the clay where they feel like they're actually taking ownership, right? That creates an opportunity for empowerment that changes the discipline of accountability from the leader having to own holding someone accountable, which is frankly a misnomer, to then putting that sense of accountability really on the other person and then wanting to hold themselves accountable.
Yep.
So this dynamic shift that you're talking about is really powerful. And once I got that, wow, I saw the performance of my team go 10x.
Awesome. I want to ask the question very soon about how did you get into leadership? But before we go there, I want to just ask you about the book that you've authored, which is around Growth Junkies Unite. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Dennis. For all of us, there's periods of evolution and revolution, and growth doesn't happen in a straight line. Talk about that with kids. They have growing pains. We all go through that. And I was going through one myself, and it was really a time of regeneration for me. And so this book was really foundational for me being able to pull from what I knew intrinsically, like it was all here internally.
Yep.
I just needed to pull it back out again. And then in the course of realizing that, sharing it with others, that we all go through this part where we need an invigoration to our learning journey. And in my mind, you're either one end of the stick or the other. You're either growing or dying. And I'd rather be at the growth end of that stick. And so for me, this was a chance to really share the tips, tricks, tools. So it's taking this distilled view, like a Reader's Digest view of all the business acumen and tools and things like that, and distilling it down to a few simple nuggets that can help people with reinvigorating their growth journey. And the reason why I call it Growth Junkies Unite is that, again, there's a tribe of us out there that really sincerely love this part of humanity, that we're here on this planet to help each other. And with EOS, one of our core values is help first. And so literally that's what this book is. It's my gift. If towards the end, I'll give you the VIP code and those sorts of things, but there's a free toolkit in there. It's packed with lots of great nuggets. And again, it's one of those things that is meant to be something that helps someone else get unstuck, right? Feeling like they're trapped, because that feeling can really suck you in and pull you in. And this is meant to be one of those catalyst things that can unlock that for you.
And I think the pandemic has actually made people feel like they're locked. They feel like they're stuck. And we're now starting to see people trying to get out of there and do other things in life, and which is pretty cool to see.
Great resignation. People are like, I'm not going to stay stuck. They're taking ownership of that. I think it's a good thing.
Yes.
It's also challenging as a business leader, right?
It is. And it's a different mindset. And I'm seeing it's quite interesting because I'm working, coaching quite a few coming out of the corporate world into their own businesses. And they're going into the entrepreneur. They were already entrepreneurs within the organization. So they had that want and that hunger for it. But it's never packaged in a way that they were expecting it, or doesn't come always the way that they were thinking it will work. And it's like what you're saying with the growing pains with the kids and so forth. It's the same thing. And we all focus at what? Just to jazz it up a little bit more and give it a little bit more excitement. Let's throw in COVID as well, just to see how you stand up to it.
Like we needed a new challenge, right?
Yeah.
One where there was no handbook, no rule book. No one to script this for us. No predetermined, here's how you're going to get through this. And that's right, Dennis. I'm with you.
That's very cool. All right, let's get to this question here, which is, so how did you get into leadership?
Yes, I think like many of us, it's one of those things where it's a combination of intentionality and a combination of having your antenna up for opportunity. So it's got to be a hybrid of a bit of both.
Yeah.
Because you can only script your life so much. I call it like getting in the flow of life, because the more you try to force something, I'm all for goal setting, planning, all those kinds of things. And then at some point, you also have to be nimble and flexible and open enough to receive being in the flow of life and looking for those opportunities as they're coming up. And it's like life's going to smack you over the head until you really start learning some of these growing lessons, right? Yeah. And so for me, I was at a point in my career where I was definitely feeling a little stuck. And that was when, like, literally someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, we want you to run this business.
Hey, so I've just said you're in San Francisco in California. Whereabouts in San Francisco are you?
I am actually in Oakland. My office is still in San Francisco in the financial district, but we're not really going there that much. Oakland on the water is where I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you say you haven't gone there or you don't go there often, how many times probably in the last year have you been into the office?
The last calendar year,
Wow.
well, 12 months, maybe 3, and that's mostly to check the mail. But a couple of times I've stayed there to hang out, but no one else was there. No one. So it felt a little uncomfortable.
Wow. Yeah, good, probably a good investment at the moment, right? Commercial property? I don't know. So it's interesting to see people are not going back to the office, and even leaders are finding it hard to bring people back into the office if they're struggling with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what are you hearing from your peers out there in the marketplace? Are they finding that hard?
They are. And my business doesn't need to be an in-person in the office kind of business. And we were mostly remote prior to the pandemic. But I do hear from other people their frustrations when their companies were asking them to come back. I really haven't heard of too many entrepreneurs or owners frustrated that their employees don't want to come back.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think a lot of leaders, listeners, they find it difficult to bring people back into the office. And some people don't want to come back in, but what I think a lot of organizations are finding is that they can work remotely and it's working okay and it's going good. So yeah. And you play the violin and also you're a vocalist. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I started playing the violin in 4th grade, and it was a remarkable situation because in America right now, there isn't free music education in the public school districts. So growing up in the middle of the country, there's a lot of money and support for that. My family wasn't on the financially solid side. So being able to play the violin, take private lessons and group lessons, and play in the orchestra and the chamber orchestra and a string quartet, that really saved my life.
It's interesting, eh? Wow. When you say save your life, what do you mean?
I had not the best experience as a young person growing up in a challenging family situation. And the violin gave me focus. It gave me a passion. It gave me a place to go. I practiced for hours and hours on end, sometimes in my room, but sometimes I went to a practice room. And I'd say I was disciplined, but I also had a need, a passion, and maybe even a little bit of an addiction, which was going in my favor to be addicted to something like that.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it was an escape for you, but at the same time, you were growing a skill, a talent. But probably 3 words that I think I picked up from there was the discipline, the focus, and the consistency that you were doing on a regular basis, of course, to get and do that. So yeah, interesting how we all go through different journeys in life and how things shape us as well. Okay, good. So let's get into this. I've got some questions for you. And how did you get into leadership?
I think leadership came to me as a young person who had to be on their own at 16 years old. I had to learn how to read and sign a lease for an apartment. I had to learn that the lights and the heat and the electricity didn't just come on. That was a shocker. I had no idea that wasn't just built in. So I think the leadership started there, having to work full time as a young person and pay all the bills. That is leadership skill, right? And managing your life. Then becoming concert master of an orchestra. That is a severe leadership role that was scary, honestly. I wasn't prepared for it, and it made me grow. It showed me, though, something that's really important, and I think a lot of people don't understand if they're not leaders and if they're not leaders of a company, is that yes, it looks shiny and wonderful, and yes, it's a great honor, but there's a lot of pressure with that. And there's also a lot of, sometimes there's not support. So being concert master of an orchestra in college, let's say, for instance, you walk onto the stage, you stand up, you're the one telling everyone to tune in, whether they're in tune or not. You're the one who's telling how the bow stroke should go and what the fingerings are. And there can be some backlash. So you aren't necessarily the most popular person as in business, as a leader.
Yeah, what do you mean I'm not in tune? I'm in tune. I can imagine the conversations and what's going on. But I actually love the example or the actual metaphor there as well, which is a live example for you. But I think for the listeners, it's a great example whereby as a leader, we have people in our organization that play different roles. So there's what an orchestra, there's different players, different instruments that they bring in, different talent. But then there are people in behind those instruments. And then there are egos, and then there are feelings and people. So there's a lot for us. Opinions, yeah, very good. And there's a lot of things for us to go through and experience. Yeah, and it actually does. And I love the other piece too, which is you go on stage first. You're the one that first stands up. That's what a leader does. That they stand up and they get on things, and then we'll bring everybody else together. But then the other analogy part of that is, because I love it. I love that you share that.
You're going down the rabbit hole of the analogies, and I'm here for it.
I love it. Because the thing here is, because you actually said something that sometimes we're out of tune, but when everybody is in tune and everyone's doing their role really well, it's just a beautiful sound.
Magic happens for everyone, for all the players, for the conductor, for the concertmaster, for the listeners. It is quite magical.
It's a nice way of putting it. Magical. Yeah, very much. So that's why I think it's a great example of what you just shared there, because the orchestra is where it plays music. And if somebody is out of tune or out of time, can you tell?
Absolutely. Everyone can tell. Everyone except for the person necessarily that is. That's not true. Depending on what your ear and your capability of is, I don't have perfect pitch. And those that do actually suffer quite a bit, because a lot of things are hard to get to perfection, right? And in business, for me and in performing, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for excellence. So we're going down a rabbit hole, but if you have perfect pitch and you hear a pitch that is slightly out of tune, it's very difficult to live with. So I'm thankful I don't have that, actually.
Okay, good. That's good to hear, because our neighbors' kids, both sides of the neighbors, kids playing the violin and they're practicing. And at times we're sitting outside because it's summer here at the moment, and we're going like, oh. And then the other times we're like, oh, that's so good. Good on them. And you can see them and hear them growing, which is really interesting. But they keep practicing. They keep doing the discipline, the focus, the consistency side of things of all the time as well. Okay, so the concert master, and what about other leadership things? When you just came into those roles, what other things have you experienced around leadership?
So the next step from that would be leading my string quartet, which was very crucial in my business journey, because I was getting all the gigs, I was getting all the clients, I was putting out the contracts, I was selecting the music, I was arranging the music, I was copying the music, I was doing all the work, all the management, all the production, and then I would hire people, and their job was to come on time to the right place, wearing the right clothing, having the right, don't forget your cello, these things happen, by the way, and following my lead. And actually, if you think about it, and a lot of people listening to this might not understand this, but if you're playing at a wedding, it is a very carefully timed situation, and you have to have the feeling for when to stop and start a song. So you're playing a classical piece as the bride and the father, let's just say, and all of the wedding party is coming down. But if you are not noticing that everyone is up at the altar at a time, and you don't stop the song in a beautiful place, it's very awkward, because then they're already up at the altar. The music is still playing, and people are like, does the string quartet know that they should stop? So I think my leadership skills, especially with improvisation, being able to gauge when to do something and when to stop, really solidified during that time.
That's very good points. And in my introduction of yourself, we talked about that you've been in the 5,000 list of Inc. around fastest growing companies in America for 3 years in a row now. So that too would take leadership around that space.
Absolutely. And that's years later. So that's recent. We were on the list 3 times in a row at a growth rate of about 65% year over year.
Nice.
That's pre-COVID. We actually were given our 3rd award in the middle of the pandemic, which was funny because when we found out we made the list, it was actually for the year before. So I own an event and entertainment production company, and my profitable multi-million-dollar company went to a screaming flat 0 in March of 2020, and I had to build it back up.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.